One morning, an old man walked to the edge of a dry, empty field, carrying a small bag of seeds. The villagers watched him with curiosity as he knelt in the hard ground and began to dig. The soil was cracked, the grass was almost gone, and the sun was already burning overhead. One of the villagers laughed. "Why are you planting trees here? You're an old man." By the time they grow large, you may not even be alive to see them. The old man looked at him, smiled gently, and kept digging. He planted one seed, then another, and another. For years, the old man had dreamed of turning that empty piece of land into something beautiful. But everyone around him thought it was pointless. The soil was dry, the summers were harsh. Water was scarce, and the old man was already growing weaker with age. Still, every morning he returned. He carried water from a distant well, sometimes making several trips before the sun became too hot. He pulled weeds from around the tiny plants and protected them from animals. When the wind knocked them down, he carefully pushed them back into the soil. When the rain finally came, he stood nearby and watched the young trees absorb every drop. But not every tree survived. Some dried up beneath the heat. Some were destroyed by animals. Some simply refused to grow. Whenever a tree died, the villagers expected him to give up. Instead, he planted another. One afternoon, a young boy who often watched the old man working finally walked across the field. He had seen the man carrying water day after day, even when his back hurt and his hands trembled. The boy pointed toward the small trees and asked, "Why do you keep doing this when you know you may never sit under these trees?" The old man stopped for a moment and looked across the field. There were dozens of young trees now, small, fragile, but alive. Then he said, "Because someone planted trees before I was born." The boy looked confused. The old man continued, "When I was young, this village looked very different. There were trees along the roads, birds in the branches, and cool places where people could rest during the hottest part of the day. I didn't plant those trees, but I enjoyed their shade." He placed his hand gently against one of the young trees. Someone else thought about people they would never meet. The boy looked across the field again. For the first time, he understood. The old man wasn't planting trees for himself. He was planting them for strangers. Years passed. The young boy grew older, and the trees grew taller. Their roots became stronger. Their branches began stretching across the sky. Birds returned to the field, and the first signs of green grass appeared beneath the growing shade. The villagers who once laughed at the old man began changing their minds. Some started planting trees of their own. Others helped carry water. What had started as one old man's strange habit slowly became something the entire village cared about. But the old man was becoming weaker. His steps became slower. His hands could no longer carry the heavy buckets as easily as before. Some mornings, he had to stop several times on the walk to the field. Eventually, he could no longer work the way he once had. Still, he visited the trees. He would sit beneath their young branches and watch them move in the wind. One morning, he walked to the field for the last time. He stopped beside the tallest tree and placed his hand against its rough trunk. It wasn't fully grown yet, but it was strong enough to cast a small shadow across the ground. The old man smiled. He looked around at the trees he had planted, knowing he would never see them reach their full height. Then he turned toward the village and slowly walked home. He never saw the forest that field would eventually become. Years later, children played beneath those trees. Travelers stopped there to rest. Farmers brought their families into the shade during the hottest afternoons. Birds filled the branches with sound, and what had once been a dry, empty field had become one of the most peaceful places in the village. And one of those children was the same boy who had once asked the old man why he kept planting. Now an adult, he would sometimes stand beneath those trees and remember the old man's answer. "Someone else planted trees before I was born." And suddenly, he understood the real meaning of those words. The old man had never needed to see the finished forest. He only needed to believe that it was worth beginning. You might be going through something similar right now. Maybe you're working towards something that hasn't given you results yet. Maybe you're building a career, raising a family, learning a skill, saving money, starting a business, or simply trying to become a better version of yourself. And sometimes, when nothing seems to change, you may wonder, what's the point if I can't see the results? But not everything valuable gives you an immediate reward. Some things take years, some dreams require patience, and some of the most meaningful things you will ever do may benefit people you haven't even met yet. Think about the people who came before you. Someone taught a child who eventually became your teacher. Someone built a road you now travel without thinking about it. Someone planted a tree whose shade you may have enjoyed without ever knowing their name. The world we live in today was partly built by people who worked without knowing who would benefit from their effort. So, don't measure the value of your effort only by what you receive today. The seed you plant today may become someone's shelter tomorrow. The lesson you teach may change someone's life years from now. The kindness you show may become a memory someone carries for decades. The work you're doing quietly may become the foundation for something much bigger than you. And if you're struggling because your progress feels slow, remember the old man. He didn't wake up one morning and see a forest. He saw dirt. He saw tiny seeds. He saw setbacks. He saw trees that died. But he kept planting anyway. Because he understood something most of us forget. A seed does not look like a forest. Progress does not always look like success. And the beginning of something meaningful can look almost invisible. So don't stop simply because you cannot see the final result. You don't need to see the entire forest to know that the seed matters. Keep planting, keep building, keep learning, keep becoming. Because sometimes, the greatest things you create aren't meant to be enjoyed by the person who started them. They're meant to be inherited by the people who come after. And perhaps that is one of the most beautiful ways to live. To work towards something you may never fully see. To give something you may never personally receive. And to leave the world just a little better than you found it.